Welcome to this edition of Real World Business Law. I'm Declan Leonard. I'm managing partner here at Berenzweig Leonard. And normally during this podcast, we focus on a business law issue. But today we're going to do things a little bit differently. First, let me introduce Jenny Salce. Jenny is our Director of Operations here at our firm. Jenny, great to have you here.
Declan, it's great to be here.
And Jenny, you joined the firm, what was it, a couple months before COVID, isn't that right?
Yeah, in October. It was October,
November. You started in October, and then, we get to the new year, we're humming along, and all of a sudden March comes. You remember back then what was going on in March?
In March, wow, I remember it was the COVID hit, and we just did not know what was going on and what was going to be announced, and it was just a crazy time for us.
Yeah, I remember you were saying people were coming into your office, everyone was getting kind of like information, but there was still a ton of confusion. Isn't that fair to say?
There was a lot of confusion, and at the time, people would come into my office, and I'm like, I'm not even following it at that point. Like, I wasn't even aware of what was going on. I was and I wasn't, but at the same token, I had to make sure that I started to become aware of what was going on.
Oh my gosh, I remember it was, for us Irish people, mid-March, we're looking for St. Patrick's Day. The only flu I was focused on was maybe getting the Irish flu that month, and here we got caught in the midst of this pandemic.
And I was looking at spring break time.
Everybody, and then of course, we're having these conversations. You, me, Seth, we're having conversations. What do we do? Do we shut down the office? Walk us through what was going on back then.
So I remember when we got together, we talked about, hey, what are our next steps? What can we do to make sure that the firm keeps going forward and moving forward and staying open? Because at that point we were still in we didn't know what was going on. And I remember us meeting and saying, hey, what's the next steps? And I remember the question being asked, hey, can we, roll out remote work? And we had that conversation, and that's how the start of the whole thing happened with the firm.
And I remember, when we were having those conversations, we were talking in terms of weeks.
Yes.
We're like, this is something we're going to have to do 2, maybe 3 weeks. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that. And I remember us chatting and saying, okay, we'll roll this out for a few weeks. We'll communicate this to the firm and go from there. We didn't think this would be, 2 years now, or more than 18 months now?
Yeah. No, it's been a long time. But thankfully, here we are. We're in June. We're in the summer of 2021. And, things are coming out of it. I mean, it's great. We've implemented our hybrid model here at the firm. And so we're obviously a business law firm. We advise businesses all the time and all of the issues that they deal with. But we also run a firm here. And with your help and your leadership, we run our own business. And so what we thought we would do in this podcast is really kind of reflect on the last 18 months and talk about what are some of the lessons that we've learned just running our own business to see if we can impart that to businesses out there, as we move forward past this pandemic.
So I think that's great. I think one of the biggest things that was communication. Communication was the biggest thing
Always
we had
is.
to do.
Yep.
Making sure that the staff had what they needed to be able to continue to work. I think also, communicating what was going on with the firm, and also listening as well. Listening was a big key as well, and listening to our employees and our staff, and just working as leaders to listen to that and hear things that are going on in the firm.
Yeah, and I mean, up until, once the pandemic hit, prior to that, we were a traditional workplace. People in here 5 days a week, and so communication was different before the pandemic. Talk about how some of that, some of those changes in order to effectively communicate internally.
So I remember when we started, you were full on, in the office. There wasn't much remote at the time. I think we were actually talking about doing remote, for snow days and things like that.
Yes.
At the time. And when the pandemic hit, we're like, oh wow, what are we going to do? And I remember saying, you guys have the capabilities, you guys can do this, let's push forward. And we just made the plan to do it. We made sure that our servers were up and running, made sure that people were able to log into the systems, and we just rolled out that process. I mean, even down to having everyone use Teams, which we didn't have at the time. The phone lines, we were able to get software on the computers, and people can actually get their phone lines on their laptops, and it was just a great way, and everyone was just supportive, and everyone worked collaboratively to roll this out. We all worked together.
One of the things that I saw that was critical was having the right sort of infrastructure of management, leadership, whatever you want to call it. We tend not to be a very sort of, what do you call it?
The hierarchy?
We don't have the hierarchy here at the firm.
No, not at all.
But I think this is one area where it really helped. And if I could put a plug in for you. I mean, having a director of operations was absolutely invaluable. Up until that board, it was really sort of, as managing partner, Seth Berenzweig and myself, we would make a lot of those decisions in terms of day-to-day operations of the firm. But when you came on board, I mean, that was invaluable. And then, of course, I'm sure, none of us were predicting that this is how it was going to go. But talk about stepping into that role and working with us in terms of that management.
So I dove right in and worked with the partners, and it was a very collaborative, effort, and everyone just dove right in, I guess is the way to put it.
Yeah. So we talk about communication. That's the first lesson learned. It's always the case. We talk about communication a lot in these podcasts. Number two, investing in technology. Some people think technology is a luxury. I think what we all found out running businesses in the midst of this pandemic is that it's a necessity. And the ones that had spent the money before the pandemic probably saw that it was a lot easier to go remote as opposed to those that were scrambling. When you came on board, one of the first things you did, you were looking at our technology. Like, where were we with technology, right?
Well, you had the capabilities of becoming remote, but it wasn't implemented at the time.
Yeah.
And so we looked at that and made sure that, this was an option that we can give to the employees and to the staff and to everyone.
And I remember Jenny talking about this, and I remember budget. Declan always in the corner saying, how much is this going to cost and stuff like that. And I remember you were a big proponent, and again, this is before pandemic.
Yes.
You were a big proponent of saying, you know what? This will pay off. Somehow, some way, this will pay off. Do you remember?
I do remember, and I agreed. And I mean, we see it now. It did pay off, having that technology and being able to contact our clients, being able to speak to people and the staff, day to day. It was just a remote situation, and we were able to still stay connected with the firm.
I mean, it was a real blessing. We were not caught flat-footed. We were able, in essence, in a very quick time frame, maybe 24 to 48 hours, to really kind of adapt and transfer everything, remote.
Yeah, it was. It was a great situation. I mean, it just happened seamlessly, and we were able to just have everyone start that. I remember it was a Friday, and that Monday everyone was full remote.
It was unbelievable. It was really seamless, and,
yes.
and you do deserve, I know you're humble, but you do deserve a lot of credit for that, for coming in, looking at our information systems, telling me I could still use my paper calendar for the next year, because that's what I'm always going to do. Let's see. So then the next thing that we learned is you have to be adaptable, and really where this really came into play. We know that our employees have shown great adaptability. I'm more focused on sort of our clients and how we relate to our clients. Talk about that a little bit.
So one of the things that we came across was when clients would call, they would get a person on the phone. They wouldn't get an automated system. They wouldn't just get an email and an automatic response. That we weren't in the office. It was still the same feel of them coming to us directly and just talking to us.
I mean, that makes a real big difference. And again, we had to adapt. We knew that, we knew, particularly like on the attorney side of things, we came in, and here I am, an employment lawyer. Businesses were really just looking for survival at that time. And so for me to just be saying, well, let's talk about the Fair Labor Standards Act, or let's talk about Title VII, people were like, look, I'm not focused on one employee in particular and whether or not I have an issue here or an issue there. I'm talking about the whole workforce. And frankly, I'm trying to keep the whole workforce. So what we did in the employment law, and frankly, across the whole business law group of the firm at Berenzweig Leonard, really looked at helping clients with things like their paycheck protection program loans. I mean, those were the lifelines back in the day that now have enabled companies to come out of this, not only just survive, but really thrive. So I think adaptability is a big, big lesson that's come out of this.
I really think it is. I think for our firm in Berenzweig Leonard, one of the key things, and, we always talk about is the one-stop shop,
Yeah.
But we literally are like that one-stop shop. I mean, we are able to help clients in what they need, and they also will get someone, on the line to speak to them, whoever that may be. And we don't look at, like you said, the hierarchy part of things in the firm. Yeah. Everyone's available and willing to speak to people, and I think that's a great thing that we provide with the firm. So going back to the communication, but also having that adaptability was one of the key things that we had with the firm and just with our clients as well.
Yeah, people throw around that phrase one-stop shop, and it's not that we know all the different areas of the law. I think one-stop shop is really a mentality. It's basically to say, look, you've got a problem. We're here to solve or help solve and work with clients, help solve their problems. That's what we mean really by a one-stop shop. So I think that's a big one. Firm culture. Here we are 5 days a week in the office. Todd's always trying to lure me out to American Prime for happy hour. I mean, that's the firm culture.
Yeah, I know.
He's successful most of the time, believe it or not. But anyways, but firm culture. Talk about that, because as director of operations, I know you and Rachel, your support, really just did a fantastic job with that. But talk about how did you maintain firm culture?
So in the beginning, it was tough. I mean, I would admit, because you want to be able to provide that firm culture, keep everyone connected. So you got to think of outside the box and think of ways to get everyone together, and also have that time, because social interaction is key. One of the things we did, throughout the pandemic is, of course, we had the Zoom meetings. You know how the people talk about the Zoom.
Yes.
We had Teams.
Yes, they're all exhilarating. Yes, we know.
We had some great events where we did like a trivia night. I would say night. Yeah, it was a nighttime where we did trivia, and it was for Halloween, and it was just trivia things going on, and people had a blast. We even had awards, and we would give the awards at the office.
Who won that, by the way? Please don't tell me Drew.
It was Drew.
Oh, he always does.
And Rachel won too. I think it was Rachel.
Yeah,
I think
good.
It was
I'm
Rachel.
happy for her.
Yes,
no,
yes.
just kidding, Drew.
Yes.
Just kidding.
We
It's just
you,
you win all the
yeah.
time. So in other words, you all used to always plan fun stuff. You came on board in October. I think we did the decorating contest, for Halloween. But come the next October, we're not all in the office. So I think the fact that you all really worked hard to maintain that connection between everybody is critical. I think
very
that's a big
critical.
thing. Yeah.
I think you spend a lot of your time with the people you work, and you want to have that relationship. You want to be able to communicate with them, and this just kind of breaks the ice at the same time and saying, hey, listen, we can also have a little bit of fun while working.
Yes.
So the culture is the big thing too on that. That's big.
And our culture, our firm's culture is not just internally, trying to make sure we've got good connection amongst everybody here at the office, but also we really want to be sort of connecting and be relevant to our clients. This podcast studio that we're in right now, it's just right inside our offices here in Tyson's, and our great producer here, Todd Castleberry, who deserves so much credit for getting this thing in place. I mean, that I think also helped us to maintain the firm culture. We obviously were not able to go to big events where we were meeting people in conference rooms like we sometimes normally do. But here we were able to come into the podcast studio. Seth and I came in a bunch. We did these Facebook Live events, hitting topics that again were relevant. It wasn't like, oh, here's the latest non-compete law. That's important as an employment lawyer, but during the pandemic, the priorities of companies out there changed, and so we would talk about the latest things coming out of the Small Business Administration with regard to the Paycheck Protection Program. Here's what you do. Here are the questions. There were so many questions that were going on back then. So that was another way that we maintained our firm culture of staying engaged. I mean, our motto, engaged with your business, staying relevant to our clients. So I think that was really important.
Yeah, and I also will add, even when you had these Facebook Lives, clients would call me directly and say, hey, what's going on? What are we doing next? And things, people were looking forward to these podcasts and these live events that we were doing. So managing that was also a great thing to do. And, with the assistance of, Rachel and, working with all of you here. I mean, those are one of the things that really, really we benefited from.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let's see. So we've talked about communication. We've talked about technology. We talked about adaptability. We talked about firm culture. The last lesson that I think we learned in the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, that we can hopefully carry forward. And you and I were talking about this before we came in, and you had a great phrase, be bold. What did you mean by that?
Don't be afraid to think outside the box. Be bold. Don't, just because something happens, don't let it sit you back. Don't let it hold you back. Don't just look to survive, look to grow. Look at your business and look to see where there's areas where you can look at and grow from that. Don't let this hold you back.
Yeah, I mean, so right now, we're still sort of coming out of the pandemic. Businesses shouldn't just be saying, well, wow, I survived. This is great. I mean, they really should. We're looking to hire a new associate. We ourselves are sort of practicing what we preach and saying, you know what, let's continue to grow the firm in a smart way. I mean, let's hope it's not so large that it's another pandemic. Let's just hope that never obviously happens again. But there's going to be tons of business challenges. I mean, let's face it. And so these are lessons that cannot be forgotten. These are lessons that you need to keep on. You need to keep near and dear as you continue on with your business.
I agree, and I think one of the key lessons that we learned here is adaptability, communication, being bold, not getting out of your comfort zone is one of the biggest things too to get out of it. Obviously, like what I'm doing here.
Yes, you're here in the podcast studio, your first time.
Yes.
And Jenny, I have to say, it was a real pleasure being in here with you. We'll do another one soon. We'll pick another good topic and come in here. But anyways, we hope everyone enjoyed this edition of Real World Business Law.
Thanks for having me.